did not stop House Republicans from shutting down the government. But hey, maybe this time is different. Joining me now is Washington Bureau Chief for BuzzFeed, John Stanton, and Senior Editor at The New Republic, Brian Beutler. John, at this very moment, Matt Drudge has a headline on his site that reads, "Surrender. Boehner rules out impeachment." And I wonder, surrender, who's supposed to surrender, Democrats or Republicans? Because, you know, Boehner has said this is a Democratic scam, but certainly there is a lot of Republican gusto for the I word, as some call it.
Yeah, there is. I mean, look, you know, he certainly doesn't want to do it. I don't think they're going to, because for him, having an actual impeachment trial on the floor is a spectacle like the government shutdown, and that's not going to work out well for them. But for his
base, you could have said that before the government shutdown, and it happened anyway.
That is true. That is true. But this one, I think he's going to stay away from. That said, he doesn't necessarily want to tamp down the talk any more than Democrats do, because for his base, particularly sort of his deeper, you know, into the weeds conspiracy type base, this is good stuff. He wants them to hear this. He wants them to be all jazzed up, and we're going to go get the president. And, you know, this is the kind of thing, especially at this point in a second-term president, this is when this starts to happen. You see with Bush, Democrats did the same kind of thing. Nancy Pelosi made it very clear she was not going to support that. They were never going to do it. But she let them still go out there and talk about it on the floor and talk about it in press releases. And it's good for your base.
Yeah, but Brian, I mean, I feel like this is a lot like saying, you know, waving a fire extinguisher around while you put another log on the inferno. I mean, like, I don't understand how you get to have it both ways here. Nancy Pelosi may have, you know, released the steam valve or whatever, but John Boehner has been plowed down by his own caucus before, and I just wonder, can the man stop them this time?
Well, so I think that you're right. Boehner's been less sort of Sherman-esque about whether he will impeach Obama than Pelosi was about whether she would impeach George W. Bush. And I also kind of agree with Stan that as things stand right now, Boehner does not actually have the inclination to do this. I think for the last 9 months since the shutdown, he's been a lot better about not getting driven into cul-de-sacs by his sort of hardline members. However, the president is going to be the president for more than 2 years, and he has more presidenting to do, right? and if some of that presidenting involves effectively legalizing more unauthorized immigrants, that's going to increase clamor. And we know that John Boehner doesn't have the same kind of tight control over his conference that Nancy Pelosi did over her caucus back in 2007 and 8. And so I think the question is what happens between now and the election, but also what happens after the election, depending on what President Obama does with his powers in the years ahead.
Yeah, not to put too fine a point on it, but, you know, Democrats wanted to impeach Bush because he led the country to war and lied about the reasons. Right. The Republicans presumably want to get the president, you know, they think his executive power, the most egregious abuse of it, has been a delay in the employer mandate that they hate anyway. So to not parse the sort of motives for impeachment, to discuss what Brian just touched upon, John, which is the president sort of, you know, his hand, I guess the administration would argue, has been forced on the issue of immigration. He has no partners. He will likely announce some kind of executive action on deferred actions or on refugee status for some of the kids coming across the border from Honduras. Josh Gerstein points out a dangerous brew in Washington, which is this: Congress will be out of session for all of August, and many lawmakers, conservative, will be spending time with their constituents back home in those solidly conservative districts, with the crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border simmering. These are not prime conditions for moderation. Indeed, they are not.
No, and actually, I think that the people that you have to be most concerned about, frankly, are the less conservative Republicans that have been keeping their heads down the last couple of years.
Right.
When they go home and they go into these town halls and they've got people screaming at them about all the kids at the border, they want to turn around, and especially if the president comes out with anything that doesn't limit the ability of kids to get into the country, that is going to really stoke that flame. And that's where you could, in theory, start to see some of those guys then start to say, well, maybe we should at least go through the motions because November's coming. I don't want the conservatives to get mad at me. So, you know, or even worse, like in 2 years when I'm one of the guys that said no to impeachment, they come back and they take it. So.
Well, and that's the sort of catch-22 for a moderate Republican, right, Brian? It's like, oh, I'll say maybe yes to impeachment and no on immigration. Immigration is the thing that actually could save a moderate Republican's job in 2014 or 2016 election.
Well, I think that they're kind of just looking 2 months ahead, a few months ahead, you know, first to the election, then to the primary, and then to 2016. So their calculations are all kind of scrambled. But I think this just kind of speaks to why Democrats have more credibility in this impeachment, government shutdown, sort of procedural extremist game, is that in the 1990s, the Republicans didn't want to shut down the government, didn't want to impeach the president, did both things. Then comes Obama's presidency. They were supposed to have learned the lessons from those mistakes, and they have shut down the government once already, and they have 2.5 years to go on impeachment. And so when Nancy Pelosi, you know, kind of gins this up, she's sort of playing a game, but she also knows that Republicans are more liable to trip over themselves and do stuff like this than Democrats are.
Yeah, John, they have proven that the impeachment cookie is totally irresistible, and so all the more reasons for Democrats to not only taunt them, but to raise $2.1 million in 4 days.
Yeah, it's remarkable the ability of the Democrats to sort of capitalize on this and to keep pushing more Republicans into saying more things. It's been amazing to watch, frankly.
It's just like cookies for everybody, and they can't say no. All right, we have to leave it there. John Stanton and Brian Beutler, guys, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.